Do you have any good intro conversation hooks?
Ooh, for this one? No, not really.
Well, it doesn't have to be about the movie. It can just be like a conversation we're having. I was going to ask you if you'd seen any other good movies. That was going to be my intro hook.
Oh, yeah, that would have been a good hook to start with. Um, like this week
Have you seen
or
any?
in general?
Yeah, like recently, if you've seen anything else besides the movie we're talking about today, since we last talked. Because I
No,
know last
not
time I
really.
asked you if you had, yeah, if you had like you were anticipating any movies,
Right.
and you were like, nope, I don't know anything. I couldn't name a single movie coming out.
I don't know movies. Although, okay, that my stance on that has changed. I do now know of a movie coming out.
Oh, what movie?
Wonka.
Oh, hell yeah. Wait,
Yeah.
yeah, actually, we talk about this in the group chat all the time. Wait, I talk about movies coming out in the group chat all the time.
I know
And you don't
you
know a
do.
single movie?
No, I know. I just none of them seem to really pique my like. You guys talk about movies. I'm like, oh, like yeah, that sounds cool. I'll say Killers of the Flower Moon is one that I do want to watch. Wonka
Good
is
movie.
one that I'm hearing a lot of good press for. Um, I don't really know if I want to watch it.
Interesting.
Maybe not yet. But like based off of a really bad trailer, which we all sort of clowned on it, and it was pretty unanimous. This movie looks like maybe not really bad, but pretty freaking bad. So to see some good press be generated around it, I don't know. I'm a little excited. Maybe reservedly hopeful. All right.
The press cycle for Wonka has been crazy. Like, at first it was like, oh, okay, Timmy Chalamet,
Right.
weird casting. And then, like, the first trailer came out and it was like, what the fuck is this? And then the like bigger trailer came out and everybody was like, this is a war crime.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and and now, apparently it's pretty decent. So is what I've been seeing in the press too, but I'm pro this movie just for the
Okay.
sheer fact that like I want movies to come out and do well, like whatever. I'll go see it. I hope it's not as like cringe, I guess, as it seems, but
Fair.
uh yeah, it does. It gives me a little bit of pause, I'll say. Also, I'm not a Paddington guy. Like, those movies are fine, but they're not. I'm
Hmm.
not like head over heels for them the way some people are. And it shares the director of the Paddington movies,
Oh,
so
okay. I haven't seen the Paddington movies, but they kind of seem up my alley. So,
they do. Yeah, they really do.
there's also the Godzilla movie coming out, like
Hell
Godzilla
yeah,
minus one or something like that.
yeah, hell yeah.
That one's been getting a lot of good press, and I don't know. I'm excited for it. That's one that I might actually like try to see in theaters. I don't know. It looks really cool.
I love the idea that you're keeping up with the press, like as if your Twitter feed is
Yeah,
the
that's the
press.
press.
Uh huh. This is We Want to Watch. My name's Lane.
My name's Ricky.
This podcast is about us talking about movies that we want to watch, or that we think we need to watch, or that the other person should watch. I think I said that last time. In the description, I think I'm much more vicious about our stupidity with movies, but that's fine.
I mean,
So, this week, we are talking about, and we had watched Incendies, which I embarrassingly enough, Ricky, I was calling this or pronouncing this wrong last week. It's not, you don't say the S at the
right.
end.
Yeah, I noticed
And
that just
so
now.
the D's nuts joke
Does
you
it
made,
falls flat?
unfortunately,
You know.
it falls flat, much like this movie?
Whoa.
Question mark?
Sheesh. I mean, I think that's a difference of opinion that we can talk out on the pod.
We will. So I had suggested this movie. This was, I am not claiming this is Elaine's frame, but
Wow.
I had suggested we watch this movie just because I've heard it's really really good. We had kind of done a little bit more of a whimsical, lighthearted movie last week, and now felt like it was appropriate. We kind of agreed we want to do alternating between kind of more serious dramas or more serious movies and lighter fare. And this one, Ensemble 2010, directed by Denis Villeneuve, seemed, yeah, like a good pick. Like I said, it's well acclaimed. It's kind of, I've heard it's just like a gut wrenching movie, and I was not super impressed by this movie, I will say. I had
Wow.
quite a few issues with it, but yeah, my kind of initial take, I guess. I kind of found it pretty melodramatic, and not in a good way, not in a fun, campy, or like, yeah, actually wrenching melodramatic way. I thought it was pretty given to, I don't know, just like an inauthenticness, I think I didn't really like. And so
Hmm.
it was paced really unconvincingly, I guess. I don't know. I came away from it, pretty, I don't want to say disgusted, not like, I don't know, just kind of repulsed by the idea of taking a movie like this and setting it in this fake backdrop of like fictional Middle Eastern civil war, uh,
Right. So
and then just being like, what if Old Boy happened in this movie?
uh,
So
yeah. So I'm glad you brought up the fact that it's fictional, like a fictional Middle Eastern place, because
yeah,
watching it several times, I was like sort of confused. I was like, oh, did I miss where they mentioned this takes place in? Because I mean, they reference like places and areas, but
yeah, all these fake names of like cities and such.
right, right. And I didn't really, I don't know. I thought I missed that. I thought that was like a plot point which I just sort of like flew over my head. Um, I don't know.
That so
Hmm.
that was something I was afraid of, that we wouldn't be equipped to kind of talk about this movie. Like when we went
Right.
in, I was kind of like, okay, this is a little bit more serious of a subject and subject matter than obviously like Grand Budapest,
Yeah,
kind
for
of talks
sure.
about some of those things, but yeah, or like Eraserhead or The Thing, all movies that have kind of complex themes but aren't necessarily like socio-political in the way that this movie tries to be.
Right.
But yeah, like once I kind of got tipped off on like where this movie was going and kind of saw the way that it was laying out, um, kind of how the mystery was unfolding, I was like, oh, this movie's just like schlock masquerading as a prestige drama
Wow.
in a way.
Sheesh.
I don't know. I tell me more. I guess tell me more about, like, do you have any relationship? I can't remember if we talked about this last week with Denis Villeneuve's movies, like Arrival and some of those other,
Um,
Blade Runner.
I believe so. Is that the original Blade Runner or the new one?
The new one. The new one.
Then no. Um, Let me check in on his movies. I mean, I've seen Dune, obviously. Um,
Okay.
I have seen Arrival, and I liked Arrival. I didn't think it was particularly bad or anything. Um,
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I kind of like this movie. Not in like a not in like a I like this movie, I would recommend it to other people, I guess.
Yeah. A movie that's impossible to recommend, I
Yeah.
think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was emotionally impactful, though. I don't know. It's tough to sort of define, I guess. So,
Tough to define why you liked it.
yeah, tough to define why I liked it. I thought it was shot well. I thought it sort of depicted the tragedy of war pretty well. Um, I thought it maybe wasn't poignant in the way that it delivered its messages, but like it was definitely sort of heavy-handed. And I mean, we can get into maybe the things we liked and didn't like about how the movie was laid out, how different plot points sort of arose, I guess I'll say.
Sure.
But
Yeah, I mean,
hmm,
I'll start by agreeing with you. I mean,
mhm,
I think this movie had pretty good cinematography. The kind of scene that's on the poster of the burning bus.
mhm.
I mean, like in a divorced aspect, it is very. I hate to say like nice to look at, but it is compelling, I guess, imagery. But that's kind
That's a
of
good way to
all
put
I
it.
feel like it was. Yeah.
Wow. So, so this was interesting then because and this feels weird, especially to try to compare and contrast these two. But the Grand Budapest Hotel was also very aesthetically driven, right? In different ways, obviously. but it had an aesthetic that it held to. And I feel like this movie did that as well. A very different aesthetic, and one that evokes very different emotions. I'd say my thoughts on the film probably aren't like fully crystallized enough to really speak on it well. But
Did you just watch this movie this morning?
I did watch this movie this morning. Yeah.
You gotta stop doing that.
Well,
You gotta do like a 2 days in advance record or watch. You know.
Yeah, I mean, especially maybe for the more heavy-hitting films, because this one it's tough, and it's tough to sort of think about or speak on, at least to me.
Yeah, I get that. I was pretty quickly disillusioned by it, and I think as time has gone on, the things I liked about it have faded in my memory more, and the things that I don't like are all that remains. So, but I mean,
Okay.
I'm definitely the outlier here. I don't,
Hmm.
I kind of looked through some of the contemporary reviews for this. It is based on a play,
Hmm.
and it is supposed to be influenced by the Lebanese Civil War, but obviously it's fictionalized, obviously. But so I think you're not wrong to be, to have enjoyed this movie. Like I get, it just I think the fact that I saw where it was going, and then the way that kind of emotional whatever reveal
Right.
I hate to even call it that, the way that was delivered, and like the message that was trying to send, it just left such a negative taste in my mouth that felt like it removed all of the wind from the sails of this movie.
All right. Do you want to start like really digging into it and digging into specifics? Because
Yeah.
yeah.
So like I said, this is Old Boy.
Right.
I mean, like,
with more steps, right?
yeah, Old Boy with more steps is a great way to put it. I was intrigued at the beginning.
Okay. Same.
And I think the setup is very interesting, right? You start out, I think it's paced really well. You kind of just get these first couple flashbacks or flashes to and from Nawal and then her daughter. And I found that, like, the setup of that mystery really interesting. And then as we never got back to the son, I was like,
Yeah,
what's the point of the son?
Yeah, he's kind of ignored for the entire beginning of the film, which is like
Basically,
fun.
he's there for like the first 5 minutes, and then he's there for like the last 10 minutes. And that's about it. He actually doesn't really do much in this movie other than receive the information first, the reveal, at the end. And
he's a good set piece, right? He does his job. He's emotional at the beginning, and then, I mean, he's also used emotionally at the end.
Yeah, but like for a movie that it seems to be so about, like, I think what this movie is going for is trying to strive for, like, here's how this brutal, awful, hatred that inspires war has impacted these individuals, right? Which,
Right.
like, I'm not saying this in a demeaning way, but that's like well-worn ground, right? Like, we all
Yeah,
know
for sure.
movies that talk about that. Like, that's a good, solid theme. No real complaints there. But then to kind of reduce both of the twins, and really almost everybody except for Nawal in this movie, like, reducing them to basically just members of a puzzle box, or like they're trying to solve this mystery. They don't really have much characterization going on. That felt kind of, I felt hollow, and like as the movie went on, I kind of thought, okay, this is really just building up to some kind of big reveal, right? Like, and not just like a
Right.
mystery of like, here's your father and here's your brother. It put a bad taste in my mouth that we never saw the other twin, really, and that even the daughter really didn't have much. She wasn't really doing a lot on her own. She wasn't really kind of going out of her way to have much characterization. She was just honestly just confused, which, like, fair. I mean, it's a confusing situation to be in, but other than that, she is like a student of math. I couldn't tell you a single thing about her.
She likes to swim, and I mean, she got that from her mother.
That's true.
And it seems to be something that both of the twins share. And it's sort of, at least in the film, it's shown as a way for them to work out some of their negative emotions, I guess. Because we see them immediately after either the first or second big reveal of the film, they're swimming, right? and she's seen swimming earlier in the film after her brother throws his little like temper tantrum. Now, I hate to be the like boss baby meme where it's like guy who's only seen the boss baby. This movie reminds me a lot of the boss baby, but
Are you about to compare this to Heat again?
no, I'm about to compare this to the Grand Budapest Hotel again, where there is one character who has an arc, whose story maybe not even has an arc, but whose story is driving the entire story, where it revolves around this character, and it's also a story within a story, with the focus being on that story within the story, nestled within the story, and the sort of outer exposition story being secondary to that. Which is just, I don't know. Again, they're very different in tone and theme, but similar in the fact that they hold to an aesthetic. It's odd the amount of comparisons that you can make between these two films, especially with how you sort of really ripped apart the Grand Budapest for. Well, you did. For like,
I'm not denying it.
yeah, for just having characters that were plot pieces essentially, and it feels like in this film, that's at least for the exposition story, that is true. I was gonna say for the main storyline, not so much. That one definitely, I don't know. It's chaotic, right? And it follows the sort of thread of hatred, which the film also, like, this film is very sort of overt about what it's trying to say, and it has the characters directly say it. It doesn't really leave anything to interpretation from the reader. It's very cut and dry. At least that's how I saw it.
It's cut and dry, and I think part of my problem with it is not just that it's cut and dry, but that it's actually taking a very kind of, I want to say, like, almost like a very kind of liberal kumbaya kind of approach to a story like this. First off, I think that the choice to kind of put it in a nameless country and not really have any, real political context for it. I mean, obviously they talk about the specific religions that are at play here, but
right,
I think
still a coward's choice.
It's cowardly, and it's like it's basically doing a thing that I hate, which is just saying, well, war and political strife really just comes from like interpersonal conflict or like hatred of groups, and that's not really. I mean, I just that's definitely a component to things, but it's not a good explanation for the kind of conflict that happens in countries like this, or like the framing of there's just some war and hate that just happens forever, and there's no deeper meaning to this, and there's definitely no imbalances of power that contribute to these things. It's just that Group A hates Group B, and isn't it crazy how Group A and Group B they're so interchangeable that a mother wouldn't recognize her son, as he's assaulting her, kind of like a thing. I get that.
Right.
I found that to be kind of an embarrassingly basic way of framing this movie, especially since this movie really wants you to. It's bathed in like, late 2000s aesthetics of like Orientalism and like the way that we depict Arab countries and things like that. Like,
like it is definably like the Middle East. Like you would not mistake it for anywhere else.
Of course, it's the Middle East, and not only that, but it's other. That the children have to travel there. That's a choice. The aesthetics of like everything's gray and like brown and has the sepia filter on in a way that like a lot of those movies from that time period did, like the early Obama years, like. When you need to depict a war-ravaged, dangerous country in the Middle East, like those are the aesthetics that you choose. And so, like, to use all of those and have war as an aesthetic, but then not actually talk about the broader conflict and, base it with this interpersonal kind of stuff. That just, again, I think obviously talking about the individual is an important way of talking about these things, right? A movie is more interesting usually when it's talking about a specific person or and their kind of relationship with a war or with conflict, but it never extrapolates their conflicts to the greater picture in a way that's meaningful or says anything.
So in my eyes, it almost makes these people like a mythology, right? The woman who sings, she is like the icon. She's the woman who sings, and she
Yeah.
loses her identity within that. And
Yeah.
even the man who she kills, who is like on the shirt of like one of the guys that shot the bus to pieces, which was a just horrid scene. The ways in which they take these icons and then they show, well, even if this icon is like removed from the picture, whether by being killed, being like sent to prison, tortured, raped, no matter what happens to them, they're still sort of like, I mean, I hate to say it again, but they are icons to their people, right? They are the rallying cry behind their people, whether it be for resistance, for
Yeah, they're
furthering
symbols.
war.
They're like not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it reduces them from
Well,
people to symbols there. I will say,
yeah.
though, the one thing that this movie definitely shies away from is the imbalance of power that you mentioned.
Yeah.
To bring up another conflict in the Middle East, Israel versus Palestine, there is a huge imbalance of power there. So much so that to even call it a war is kind of laughable, right?
You know, I'm embarrassed that I didn't even think about that when, like, I truly didn't even make that connection. That's brilliant, honestly, Ricky. Like I hadn't even
It's
made that connection, but it's the way that people kind of boil down and like reduce it to just like two sides of violence. It's been going on for thousands
right,
of years. Like you're not going to fix it.
right. And
People just are. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
mention
Go
that
ahead.
like in the film, like the
Yeah.
taxi driver is like, oh, like if there were notaries here 2,000 years ago, right? Like they'd know whose land it is. Like that to me was a
Yeah.
distinct like, oh, this is pointing towards that conflict without the power imbalance present in the actual conflict,
Yeah.
because it's very the war that's happening there is messy, sure, but it's one that results in a huge imbalance in civilian casualties towards one side.
Right.
In the film, it seems as though the civilian casualties are sort of back and forth, and
Equal.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, they
Yeah.
don't, at least in my eyes, they don't draw a very good line between the two, especially
Yeah.
in how much the refugees, quote unquote, seem to be able to interact with the people of the nation.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's like a standard cycle of hate kind of
Right.
story, you know. And I really think just to come out and say it, I think that the treasure hunt at the center of this movie and the big reveal at the end of who her rapist was in captivity is so ugly and sadistic, and ultimately unnecessary. I think that
Yeah.
the point that if the point this movie's trying to make could have been made without going there, and the fact that it went there, I think speaks more to how this movie is supposed to be it's driving to a point that is more about ugliness and inevitability than it is about any kind of meaningful commentary on politics or anything like that. This movie could have just as easily, and I know that this was based on a play, so maybe this is a criticism of the original author or something, but it could have just as easily been about like her rediscovering that her former lover was somebody that was her torturer in prison, or like there are just dozens of different ways. Or it could have been her son was her torturer, but it didn't have to result in rape. Like to go
Right.
there, I've been making jokes comparing this to Old Boy. Old Boy's not a movie I really love. I think Old Boy has some interesting things, and a lot of it is whatever, makes me roll my eyes. But at least that movie is going for that. Like it is schlock. It is pushing the envelope on purpose for a reason. It's not trying to masquerade as like anything more than what it is. This movie is absolutely trying to ground itself in this kind of serious, dramatic, prestige aesthetics and story and like poetic narrative, and instead it does backflips to be as disgusting and revolting as possible, but still having that veneer of prestige. And so I was like totally revolted by that choice. Again, the filmmaker didn't write the story, so I can't. This isn't necessarily the fault of the movie. It's an adaptation, but I don't know. It felt very unearned and very unnecessary and just kind of gross for the sake of it.
So now, apart from the very last reveal that the torturer was her son, up until that point, I like that definitely did sour the movie a bit. But up until that point, it's pretty poignant, and I think I mean, that last little bit maybe doesn't quite make sense, but it plays really well. The movie especially plays really well with the difference between what the audience knows and what the character knows, and building tension around that, right? Because from the point that we see her first have her like son, and he gets the tattoo of the three dots on his foot, we know that that's not the twins, and we know that that son is older than the twins. So then to have the daughters sort of go on this goose chase, this treasure hunt, as you called it, and obtain that first piece of knowledge that she was raped in prison by her torturer, and like them to find out that they were the product of rape, and like that sort of emotional turmoil that occurs from that. I mean, that at its core is very compelling, right? It's a very
Well, yeah, I guess. I don't know. At some point, it's like, stop, he's already dead. Like, I don't know. Just how many tragedies can you stack on top of each other? It's like misery
right.
porn.
Well, I think that first tragedy is sort of maybe not warranted, but it's sort of like understandable, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, well, like yeah, this is something that's very real, that very much so can happen within. I mean, within
Sure.
within war-torn regions, not even within war-torn regions, but within like life, like this shit
Yeah,
does
yeah, of
happen, and
course. Yeah,
to turn a
yeah.
blind eye to that is sort of like, I don't know, it's denying the miseries of the world, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that any individual thing in this movie is necessarily unrealistic, except for, of course, like the very final reveal. It feels so
right.
gross to even call it that, like, but like, actually, Brad Pitt and Edward Norton are the same person. I don't know, but like, that initial killing, the honor killing, and then like losing her child, and
Yeah.
then she has to quit university, and then she witnesses these like terrible massacres, and then she knows that her kid was sent off to the front lines of and becomes a Muslim militant, and then she gets imprisoned, and then she's raped, and she gives birth, like all of those things on top of each other. It's not that it's even unrealistic, it's just like, what is the point of depicting this only to then, this movie's not really, I don't think, about her suffering, I guess. The movie it's barreling to this pulling the rug out from under you twist about the twins, right? The mother's dead. Like
Right.
we have our time with her. Really, this is more about the emotional impact on the two children. And so it's like, what is the point of stacking these horrific tragedies up just to kind of have, just to have like a horrible like anti-catharsis at the end, I guess.
The end feels very unfulfilling. I'll say that for sure. The two letters, I mean, so like the two letters, like I guess there's a sort of, it's weird to say it, but poetic justice in the son and the father being the same, and the letters being to the two sides of him essentially, after he adopted a new name. But it definitely wraps up a little too neatly in the fact that, oh, he was also living in Canada, and specifically near where she was living.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
oh, she saw him at the pool one time and recognized him by his tattoo, the tattoo on his foot. And it's all very.
Yeah. Which, yeah. Yeah. Like, this is what I'm saying. If it had been like a reveal that like actually her, lover from when she was younger, her first pregnancy, he was spared and became like a militant, and he was the torturer. It could have just as easily been something like that, like
Or like
letter
a tale
to
of brothers,
the boyfriend.
right? Like
Yeah,
she still
it could,
sees
yeah,
like the
like,
original father die,
right.
and then like, oh, like, but his brother was a part of the nationalist regime, like yada yada. It's like, all right, well,
Yeah.
fine. And that's at least maybe even more believable, right? I mean, the timelines
Yeah.
aren't like very fleshed out. We know she was in prison for 15 years. I don't know.
Yeah. And then the guy looks identical in Canada, even though it's been another presumably 15, 20 years after she gave birth to the twins, at least. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, we see her daughter at the pool with her. We don't see the son. which another weird thing. He was sort of
Yeah.
dropped off for that portion of the film, so just ignore that. Yeah, it's all very sort of odd. That being said, I don't think that that's necessarily bad, right? Like I don't think that life has very sort of neat, clear-cut storylines. Although the letters at the end really do sort of put a damper on things, right? And
It's
then like
trying
the
to put a
letter to the
bow on it.
twins, it is trying to put a bow on it, but it does the very opposite, at least for me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the letter to the twins being like, I finally like severed the thread of hatred. All now is well. The truth has been revealed, etc., etc.
Right. Which, like, if I'm getting that letter from my dead mom, like, let me tell you, the thread of hatred has not been severed.
Right,
Like,
right.
I mean,
And they seem
I
far
get that.
more at peace too. Like those twins seem so at peace at the end of the film relative to the beginning,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
so fucking weird. I,
Yeah.
I get that, like, okay, well, they can sort of put their mother's death behind them, and we can tell from their reactions at the beginning that they had a sort of interesting relationship with their mother, a very sort of charged relationship. But
Yeah.
it's still it's very odd for that, and like they see their father and brother once.
Right. And they're not going to do anything to try to, like, reconcile that or, like,
Right.
I understand this just points to why this movie is really just about delivering a ham-fisted kind of message instead of actually dealing with the problem that it's showing. You know,
Yeah.
it's and, like, I understand that this is it's inspired, right, probably by Oedipus or, like, whatever Greek tragedy. You know, it's trying to deal with these, like, questions of fate and, like, you know, generational whatever trauma and, like, things like that, but then it kind of
So it
it tries
loses
so
its
hard to
way.
ground it.
Right.
It loses its way, and it tries so hard to ground it in, like, realism and, like, kind of showing this, like, conflict that is supposed to mirror real life conflicts, although stripped bare of any context. And so you're, like, kind of not lulled into, but, like, yeah, it loses its way because you think that it's going to go in, you know, a more realistic direction than
Right.
this, like, ridiculous one at the end. And like you're saying, they're so calm, as if having an explanation of why your mom was so fucked up her whole life that you knew her would just make would make everything okay.
Right.
Like, as if, like, that's all that needs to be done is, you know, releasing the burden. I agree with you. That's a good observation. Like, they are so chill at the end.
It's weird. It's like weird how
It's weird.
how like the vibe has shifted. I'll also say
Yeah.
that at least in Oedipus, and I'm glad you made that sort of correlation or that connection between the two of them. At least in Oedipus, he tears his eyes out in like frustration at himself, at the world. He knows what he's done is wrong, and you don't get that from this film. We see him at the grave at the end, and that's it. All right, so like maybe cut this, but I expected him to kill himself after reading that letter, right?
Listen, if I didn't cut me saying that Wes Anderson is anorexia propaganda, I'm not cutting you saying that this character should have killed himself
All right.
or might have, or you
All
expected
right,
him to.
fair, fair. I just like
Yeah.
like that's what I expected, right? And it almost seems like it's missing that plot beat, right? Where it's like, well, and maybe this is the thread of hatred within me, right? But I saw that and I was like, oh, like this guy is going to feel this, like, because he reads the letter to the son, to him as a son, and it's like, oh, like I still love you. Everything was born out of love, even
Well,
our
he reads
children
them-
born out of love.
Yeah.
And it's like,
He reads the rapist letter first, I think.
yes, yeah. Well, and then the son, the letter to the son, the second
Yeah.
one is the one where
Yeah.
she's very sort of like forgiving and like, well, like as soon as I had you, I knew that I would love you, yada yada. It's like, okay, great. I don't know, man. I don't know how you could like go through that and then go back to like cleaning buses, right? As weird as that sounds.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, and you know, I guess the ultimate message right at the end is, like, oppressors or, like, torturers, they all have tragic backgrounds too, which is, I'm not necessarily opposed to a movie that tries to sympathize with somebody, especially from the, like, I think that could have been an interesting tack for this movie to take if it had been, if there had been a little bit less time brutalizing this poor woman during all these flashback scenes and, like,
Right.
even honestly, even get rid of the twins altogether. This, maybe I'm just like picking bones with this movie for like fundamental like plot whatever, but I think it could have been much more interesting if they wanted to kind of show like that ultimate like reconciliation of these two identities of this person, or like his tragic history versus what he had done. That could be interesting. Like I could see that being compelling if there was any context to it, or if we'd spent more time with him. But yeah, all we know about him now is that he's on a bus, or he cleans buses, and he lives in Canada, and he lives in an apartment. Like, we don't know, he doesn't have any chance to reconcile with his siblings.
Right.
That could be an interesting thing to discuss. Anyway, yeah, there's just...
I mean, if they had removed the twins and just, like, left him
Yeah.
as a torturer, and, like, even if they wanted to keep the sort of the rapist, like, that's fine, whatever. Very bad person. And then have the scene where she recognizes him and confronts
Right.
him, right? And then they sort of work through, like, that's the main conflict of the film. Yeah, the whole way that it's sort of structured is very odd.
It's so much about putting the fucking Agatha Christie mystery together. Like, I
Right.
find that so...
And especially when
I
it's
don't
like...
want to say bad taste, but...
a lot of it, except for the old boy twist, is apparent to the audience, right? From, like...
Did
From very early on.
Did you not... Did you not see the twist coming?
The...
The moment?
No. The...
Really?
I mean, I saw that the twins were a product of rape, like, right away, right? Like, or...
Right.
Not the product of rape, but that, like, once they reveal that, like, oh, hey, like, she was in jail, she was raped by her captor, I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
and that's when she had the twins.
Right.
I did not put together the timeline of, oh, her son would have been old enough that he could have become her torturer. I did not put that together at all, honestly.
Yeah, because when they show her on, or not her, but her like midwife on her deathbed, the twins go to visit, or
Yeah,
Jean,
yeah.
John goes to visit, and the midwife is, she says to the translator, she's like, oh, you're the woman who sings I watched over her for 15 years or something like that. So once it became clear after the twins were born, I don't know. It's like that was the only character we really had. Like the torturer, the son, is the only other adult male that we're introduced to up to that point.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was like, this movie's not going to introduce some other guy who's her brother, or who's their brother with 30 minutes left of the movie. So it was like, okay, I see where this is going. And at that point,
Wow.
I was like, basically rooting for the movie to not do that, to be wrong. Like, I wanted to be wrong so badly, because I was like, this is so... Yeah, just eye roll
So
inducing.
we saw the brother as as a militant, right? Yeah, and well, in the scene where he kills children, and that was
Right.
A, shocking, and B, I don't know, maybe something that was only added for shock value. But I mean, this movie's messy, right? Like it definitely tries to like hit you with gut punches one after the other, which it does. It delivers on that. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's like, I guess I should have been able to put that together, but I saw that, and like it never once occurred to me that like, oh yeah, like of course like he's gonna be the torturer. That being said, I still like the film. I think there maybe are flaws with it, and it's overblown, over the top in its misery. Misery porn's a good way to put it, like you said earlier. But I still liked it. I think it like holds, maybe not holds true to its messaging, but it delivers on what you'd expect from it, right? Like you're going in like this is going to be a sort of like harrowing experience, and it is.
See, this movie did not meet my expectations at all. It was like askance at a 90-degree angle from like minute 10, I think. To have this very locked down introduction of these characters, and then to take it in such a gratuitous and, like I said, kind of orientalist way and apolitical, it just, I mean, yeah, it was not what I wanted at all. It chose to neither be serious family drama or like character study. It fails to be a political commentary, not saying anything meaningful. I mean, it just I feel
Yeah,
like
war is bad, right?
like yeah
hatred
yeah.
breeds
And not
hatred.
even war is bad.
Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, cycles of hate, etc. Like
Right.
I just I found I this movie did not meet my expectations in that regard, and maybe that's my fault for thinking the movie was one thing and it was really another. But I mean I will like I said, I do think that the movie is, from a craft level, it's definitely competently made. Like, it's not like garbage.
Right.
I think the performances are good, for the most part. Some of the secondary characters, I was like, okay, these performances feel a little bit drama school. But especially when she's in talking at the university, that felt a little bit. Some of those characters were a little stereotypes. Like old kind of whimsical professor and like anyway.
When she was first tracking down her mother and talking to them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I mean, the main characters I think do a good job, or the main actors.
And it does show that, like, I guess that's sort of foreshadowing to the brother-father thing. That, like, oh, she had these twins when she was already, like, fairly old.
Yeah.
So it's...
Yeah.
You should be able to put together, like, oh, it's near the end of her prison sentence. Yeah.
No, I mean, I have no problem with, like, her taking those parts of the journey. Like, again, that was pretty early on, so I was still somewhat interested in the mystery nature of it. But yeah, just the performances, like I said, were just not up to snuff there. But
she treats the beginning of the journey very much so like it's like a vacation. Like there's a severe tonal shift between like the very first scene and then the scene when she's like in her mother's homeland.
Yeah.
She seems almost like joyful to be back there. And then it just sort of like crushes her spirits being there. And I mean, our spirits gets crushed as well, seeing what her mother went through but it's I mean it's the flip between like what the audience knows and what the character knows again. Where the emotional impact that the characters are going through are due to the information that they're learning about their mother and father later on. But it's not about like, maybe it's not like directly about her mother's experiences. It's about how those experiences relate to the children as they came into being.
Yeah.
So I don't know, which sounds weird. I mean, it's not about like, oh, like our mother got raped. It's, oh, we are children of our mother, of like the rape of our mother, which is
right, which is gross.
Yeah,
like that's kind of nasty.
For like for that to be the big gut punch, like woe was I, and then like we flip to see like her mother going through the most traumatic period of her life, and it's different the path that the reader or the watcher is taking versus the path of the characters. It's definitely odd. There are parallels there, though.
It is odd, yeah. And the most interesting part of this movie, I think, by a fucking country mile, is when she's an assassin for like a good 15 minutes. There's like or maybe 10, like quiet moment of her being recruited, and then it's the only time we really see her doing anything. She's not having something done to her, really.
So I originally thought that the like guy who recruits her, like, oh, like just because our enemies are the same doesn't mean that we are allies. Like, I thought that guy was going to be the father.
Yeah.
And I thought that for a little bit until we got to the like, oh, your mother was raped in jail thing, and I was like, all right, well, whatever.
Yeah.
But I thought that was going to be a big plot point, like, oh, like she's in prison, and then like she has children in prison like right away, and then like, oh, how does she smuggle them out, or like how are they saved, yada yada, how are they reunited, and the film definitely took a like left turn from that. It was very different from and it does that a lot.
Well,
but
her story basically ends after she's escapes prison or is released from prison. We then cut to 20 some years later when she sees him at at the pool. Like, we don't really learn anything else about her life in this huge chunk of time. Like, there could have been something interesting said about what was her relationship with her children actually like, other than, we get these passive kind of like comments from the son, but who I could not, for gun to my head, could not tell you the name of. But like he kind of has some smart ass comments in the beginning about like how she was crazy or confused. But
isn't his name John? Because it's
no,
John
is
and
the
Jean.
Daughter's name.
Well, her name's like Jean N-E, right?
It's French,
Yeah. The French.
His name is Simon.
What the fuck?
Yeah, Simon.
Do they say that in the film?
Yeah, honestly. Oh, Jean. I think it's Jean is the notary, and then Jean is the daughter.
Okay.
So,
All right. Yeah.
But okay. But I mean, either way, yeah. Like
as an aside,
yeah.
Yeah, but very forgettable son. He's not really used for anything except to talk to the warlord.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like all of this being said, like all of the shortcomings of the film, I still think it's a good film. I think it delivers the message that it's trying to deliver. Whether or not that message is necessarily overplayed or particularly useful, wow, that's kind of.
I don't know, man. I feel like if this movie was trying to tell me even just a message as simple as like war is bad, cycles of hate, etc., I think that it does not do a good job delivering that message, because it's ultimately just like it's like I said, it's a misfire of like its intentions. It feels like it sets it up to be this, like I said, kind of locked down, dramatic, interpersonal, generational thing, and then it goes into this. It like goes big picture, and then it comes back to like this like extreme melodrama of just like soap opera plotting, which again, like a soap opera, Old Boy, they know what they're doing. This movie, it just seems contrived, I guess.
Contrived is a good way to put it. Yeah.
Like someone was like the author was sitting there like tapping his pencil to his mouth and was like, how can I make it so that a woman gets raped by her son? What can I like
reverse engineer?
Yeah. What kind of story can I reverse engineer around this? Maybe that there is more context to this. I'll admit that like there could be a deeper meaning here that I'm not understanding based on the Lebanese Civil War, maybe. But to me, it seems very like misguided and reverse engineered and contrived and all of those terrible things, and just ugly. It's like an ugly.
It is a very ugly film.
Not like.
Yeah, I don't know if it's trying to be, but like it definitely seems like it is, right?
It's gratuitous for sure.
Yeah. And maybe not even gratuitous in its violence, even though it is violent. But like, there's definitely violence that could be shown, which isn't. When she becomes the assassin, right? Like it doesn't. It shows her firing, but the focus is wholly upon her. I mean, that's sort of the point at which she becomes an idol, and that is something the movie does well. Let's not say that the movie doesn't do well in. It paints the portrait of, well, these are people who become sort of figureheads, right, for their movements. In becoming figureheads, they lose their, not personality, but they lose who they are as a person. She becomes outcast from all others. And, like, her daughter sees that when she's trying to track her down. She has to track down the woman who sings. She can't track down her mother. I don't know. I think the movie, again, like, I think it does really well right up until the end, where it just sort of, it has that really, really sort of contrived plot point, and the letters are all so weird and just definitely don't, it's odd tonally, like very odd tonally.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of the odd tone, why the fuck did they play a bunch of Radiohead in this movie?
Yeah, was it Radiohead? Okay, because
yes,
it was.
They played like the same Radiohead song like 3 times.
It sounded like Soundgarden-esque.
Yeah, I mean, take your pick. I'm sure it could be.
Yeah, but it's very just sort of. I don't know, and they do it after some of like the most emotional scenes too, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, it's a weird choice. It's a very like, again, it's a tonal misfire, I think, to have that, but
yeah,
bizarre, really, really bizarre movie. And yeah, the pace of like, just to kind of round out, I guess, The pacing was interesting in the beginning, but then, I like the kind of time spent during each, kind of flashback to flash forward. However, the story really didn't seem to be going anywhere in the frame story.
Yeah. The way the
just
scenes cut between those as well, very very interesting, very cool.
I do like that it didn't, there weren't obvious like markers between present and past. Like obviously, like you can tell based on context and like the characters and the dress, but like the way people were dressed. But I did like that it wasn't like there was no like artsy stylistic way of like cutting between them, or like showing like intertitle cards or putting a filter over the old footage, like I do like that it was a little bit jarring and kind of fluid. So I do think that was good.
Mm-hmm.
The way that time is kind of depicted as, this one kind of stream in the movie. I again just fell so flat. I did only give this 2.5 stars, so I didn't like completely destroy it. I do think there's something interesting in here, but
I mean,
I gotta pick a movie I like.
I'd give it like 3.5 or 4 stars, maybe 3.5. It's a bit too serious for me to casually recommend it, and it's a bit too, I don't want to say empty, but like a lot of it rings hollow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a little too hollow for me to try to recommend it to like a serious watcher.
I mean, I was disappointed. I was really hoping that this would be a kind of a moving drama, and instead it just, But actually, I'm just now thinking about this. I had seen Villeneuve had done another movie, or had done a movie, I think right before this one, about the Polytechnique massacre, where in the 90s, I think there was a mass shooter targeted a woman's engineering school.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, and that movie, like, it was framed around a guy. They created like a random dude to be like the center character of the story, basically. Not the shooter, but like just some other whatever, like student at the school. And just, I remember that leaving a bad taste in my mouth and thinking like, this is how you want to tell this story of this event, is through this person's eyes and not through one of the many, many women, that were killed or that were there, at this school. Maybe I should have had better expectations going into this. That could be on me.
I don't know. I mean, on its whole, I definitely, like, I didn't hate it. I'd say I liked it. No, I would say I like it still. Even having talked through it.
I mean, you're valid,
it has flaws, but it's like, it's a tragic film, and it definitely plays like a tragedy, and I don't think tragedies have to be realistic or, I mean, it's down to earth in certain ways, and very much so not down to earth in others. And I think that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, obviously you're not the only person who likes this movie. I just,
right.
It's so absurd and tries to be so grounded.
While also being extremely fanciful. Like,
here's this like moving, dramatic, tense, clearly trying to go for political commentary, even though it's stripped of all context, war movie with just this fucking convoluted escape room of an incest plot. Just that just like does not marry in my head. It just collapses, I guess, on itself because it doesn't really earn getting there. Like you said before, it kind of loses itself in trying to get there because it's so contrived. But
yeah, it doesn't deliver on either the overarching sort of, oh, like this is a brutal war documentary or a condemning piece about the horrors of war. I mean, it does show the horrors of war.
Yeah, but those are serious and kind of dark scenes, but they're not
right.
They're not very human. They're kind of hollow. Like, we don't spend a lot of time learning about, who these characters are. Maybe that would be too cruel.
I mean, even just following the mother's story, like completely cutting out the expository story, right? And like just following her story from, I like that would be just more interesting, I guess. Like the interpersonal drama really sort of falls flat, and it causes the more overarching war horror story to fall flat as well. Like it trips it up under its own weight.
Yeah, I really wish this had just been a movie about her, about Nawal, because
Yeah.
if we had gotten more time about like her life and like her actual agency, I mean, this movie basically just tortures her, and that that alone is enough to make me not like a movie. If we're just going to torture its main female character, especially like in this kind of context that feels or like with all of these signifiers of like Islam and the war torn Middle East, like it feels very questionable, I guess at best. So yeah, I mean I can see why people like this movie though, I think. So like I'll give it to them. And I do like his other movies. I think he's a better director when his subject matter is not so fucking serious, I guess, or when he's not trying to deal with something so political. I do like Arrival. I like Dune.
Yeah, I like
Prisoners
Arrival.
is
I
okay.
like Dune as well. I like both of those a lot. And those are the only other two movies I've seen by him.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where his career goes, I guess. Now that he's like locked into these kind of action sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I enjoyed it for what it was. I mean, I don't think it was a masterpiece, but I think it was a good film. It was definitely impactful, to me at least.
I respect your opinion.
Do we have a movie lined up for next week on what we want to watch?
I don't have anything picked out yet. I was looking at this list here.
Neither do
I guess it is a Rick's pick, baby, but
Ooh, a Rick's pick, huh? Let me think. I don't know. We want something a bit lighter for sure. Have you seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind?
I haven't. No.
You
That was one
haven't?
that Christopher, he suggested. This was one of the ones he was like, you'll have some hot takes on that movie, which is code for you're going to hate this movie. So,
Okay. This is another one shown to me by my English teacher. I think this one is not... You will have some hot takes on it.
God damn it.
I don't know.
For $1, name a movie I'll like.
Yeah, right. It's not
The thing
bad.
is-
I think people take it like far too seriously and take away the wrong things from it.
The thing is, I know the premise of this movie. I think I
Okay.
even know how this movie ends just
Okay.
from like it's in the cultural consciousness.
It is.
I just don't I truly I have not seen it. I've seen a couple scenes from it.
Mhm.
Like a trivia or whatever, but like I actually don't know what people are saying I'm gonna have hot takes on. Like I'm actually like I know that Charlie Kaufman is involved and he's like, the writer of like Being John Malkovich and some other movies that I'm not a huge fan of. I like some of his stuff, but but I don't dislike his stuff for content necessarily. And usually I feel like when people say, "Oh, you're gonna have hot take," it's because there's like misogyny or
Oh, no.
like something grating.
It is a bit
So-
grating, I'll say. There's just parts of it which are very sort of like infantile, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey.
and I mean that's sort of in the name, right? It's about escapism. It's the eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. It's like, okay, great. So how do you achieve spotless mind? Yada yada.
Right.
I don't know. It is sort of it's very contrived. There's like
I mean, I'll take a contrived movie that isn't,
yeah.
Old Boy.
I don't think it takes itself too seriously, but I think people put that lens on it, and they're like, "Oh, this is like the greatest film ever made. It's like so deep, yada yada." When it's like, not really. I remember thinking it was just okay in high school. It's like pretty good. I had like a few quotes that you could take out of it, but like nothing that's
Yeah.
I don't know, nothing like impactful, nothing life changing. Maybe I'll think differently on a rewatch.
Is that what we're going with?
Yeah, I mean, if you're all right with it.
I've got my head in my hands, pumping my fist. Yeah, we can watch it if you want.
Okay.
I had a different suggestion, but this will work.
Well, no. Let's hear your suggestion.
Well,
Wow.
since I'm going to a small town in Minnesota that won't be named
Mm-hmm.
for vacation here, I was thinking about Fargo, and
Oh, okay.
I don't want to necessarily watch Fargo because we've both seen it, and that movie. I mean, I would. Don't get me wrong, I want to watch Fargo, but
Hmm.
we both seen it. I don't know how much interesting stuff we could talk about there.
That's a more
but
serious one, though.
We have different definitions of serious.
All right, fair.
But no, I mean, I was thinking maybe something else from the Coen brothers filmography if you wanted, but we don't have to. I'm okay with watching Eternal Sunshine, but I just like I don't want this podcast to be about movies I hate. I feel like you guys are like,
No, I know. You know
say
what?
the line,
I don't even
Bart,
think
or
it's
whatever.
yeah. I don't even think it's something that you would necessarily hate immediately. I do think it's one that has like a sort of not intolerable following, but a pretty bad following, and it's at least to me, right? Maybe that's just like what I've gotten from it. I think it'd be interesting for someone who's
Okay,
only seen
alright.
it through like the cultural consciousness to take a look at it and
Okay.
see what you think out of it.
All right. I'll give it the chance. You know, I really something I want to do with this little project of ours is get better at like giving things a chance. I think sometimes I do have preconceived notions based on like things I picked up or fans of the movie or like actors I don't like or like things like that. So I'm willing.
I mean, that
to
happens
give it,
with everyone, though,
I would
right?
like to give it a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is that I will come out and say vicious, vitriolic things based on my preconceived notions of like Jim Carrey as an actor. So,
Fair.
I'd like to challenge myself a little bit more. So I'll give this movie a chance. And, again, one of these days we're going to watch a movie that people like and I'm going to like it too. And I won't just seem so contrarian. But, okay, so we want to watch Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yes, we do.
2004, directed by Michel Gondry, who has an interesting filmography outside of this movie, I'll say. But we'll talk about that next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Do we want to have any kind of ending besides... I mean, I can keep cutting the...
I don't remember what I did
it's
for
funny.
Hmm.
That was what you did?
Mhm.
And when I was cutting it, I realized it sounds a hell of a lot like the music from Super Mario 3D World.
Nice.
It's not exactly the same, but it's close. But no, I mean, the embarrassing thing is that's from the Eraserhead episode, and so no one has any context for why you're doing that.
Let's go.
Because
It's lost
So, I mean, we can
media.
just keep it. in lieu of something better, again, we can
I think that's
keep
fine.
it in there. Cool. Bye.
All right. Thanks for listening. Bye. Do 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 do.